So next thing on the list to do is the thermals. Main thing is this big thermal bar. It's a fairly big item. I wanted to get it done next. In the Tesla, this is sort of a bit of a strut brace. In fact, it is a strut brace. It goes between the two strut towers and makes it stronger. But they also use this to mount all these thermal things. So the air conditioner compressor and the super bottle, which is the coolant bottle that distributes the coolant everywhere and changes the temperature of the coolant using either the air conditioner compressor or the radiators. And so in addition, this beam comes out and links up to this aluminium beam here, and that's where the 12-volt battery mounts. And the VC front, this is called VC, vehicle control front, and this basically does the 12-volt management. So actually I can show you exactly how this works using the service mode in the Tesla. It gives a good representation. This one here in the middle, that's VC front, and you can see here this is the PCS, power conversion system. So this takes high voltage from the main traction battery, converts it to a lower voltage to charge the 12-volt battery, and then VC front distributes it to VC left, VC right and VC left, the vehicle control left and right, and this has E-fuses in it. It's quite an important part really. So you can have a look at where that thermal bar mounts in the Tesla. It's a bit hard to see in there. There's the battery obviously, and there's VC front, the top of the thermal bottle, the air conditioner compressor, and you can see that strut brace mounts between there and there. Obviously it's going to go into as close a position as that in the Land Rover. The main determinant for exactly where this sat was really the VC front here. So I put it as far back as I could with the clearance, and it's sort of as high as I could get it, retaining the top rubber mount here. Just put a nutsert in the firewall there. Also the air conditioner pipes, obviously it has to clear that. It's also close to the coolant lines that go into the main computer, which sit on the other side of the firewall there. So it's quite close to that as well. In fact, I've actually had to grind some of the fins off VC front here for enough clearance there. And mounting it was pretty straightforward. Once I worked out where it was, I just used some 25mm square steel tube, welded to the strut brace there, and they go down and pick up on, I didn't even drill a hole, they were just original bolt holes in the Land Rover chassis. And then there's, on each side, there's an angled arm that comes out and picks up on the firewall. The angled arm works well because it supports it in that direction as well as that direction. And so they just bolt through the firewall there. So that's nice and solid. Annoyingly, I was a bit close here, so I actually had to bend this refrigerant line. Wasn't too hard to bend, luckily. Also had to bend this one back a bit, because this usually sits further back in. That wasn't too bad though. Also, just enough room between the bar and the coolant output there. Let's have a look at the how the thermal system works, because it's one of the key components of a Tesla and why it works so well, why it charges so well. So this is they call it the super bottle. At the bottom of that, there's a 5-way valve that controls where the fluid goes. This is the old system. They use an octo valve now, which has improved even more. Still, this is pretty awesome how it works. And then you've got a pump on each side to pump the coolant, obviously. And you've got some temperature probes in there so it can see what temperature is going in and out of the battery, etc. So you've got these two lines here, go to the radiator at the front. Actually, I'll put the car up on the hoist so we can see where all the other thermal lines go to. So coming up under the car here, and point up underneath that thermal bar and see the bottom of the super bottle with that 5-way valve. Basically, there's two main coolant loops, one for the battery and one for the motor and PCS. So the battery line actually comes out, you can see the chiller here, which is chilled by the air conditioner compressor, comes out here, and then you got a couple of little lines here that actually go to the main computer of the Tesla, the autopilot main MCU. So it does a lot of work, so it needs to be cooled. I need to get, I've got a little silicon angled hose to get around here and then come back into this 25mm hose. So this will come back and goes to a splitter from 25mm to 19mm heater hose, and goes to 2 and goes up and through up in here, and that goes up and goes into the battery pack obviously, and that goes to the, well, it used to go to the front coolant manifold of the batteries. The battery's sitting the other way around in the Land Rover, so it's actually going to the back. Doesn't really matter. So yeah, it goes through all the battery modules and then comes out here, which is the front of the battery, which used to be the back of the battery. And yeah, just goes through some 90mm heater hose, then goes back to a 25mm heater hose, passes through and comes back through here. Then the second loop actually worked really well. Another outlet here, comes through and down and to the heat exchanger. That hose worked perfectly, because remember this, the motor used to mount right at the back of the car. It didn't used to mount here, obviously. But that hose picked up at the front of the battery on a extension that went all along the side of the battery, came along and then came back and then went to the motor, which sat at the back of the car here. But worked out really well in that without any modification, that hose just married straight up to, straight into the chiller there. That worked out perfectly. So then, yeah, so then it comes out the other side of that chiller there and round to the, round through there, around the back, into cool the inverter, the motor controller basically. And then goes through the inverter to cool it, comes out here, and then goes through up here, and then that goes into the PCS, power conversion system, which is the DC-DC. It goes up to VC front there, and also the onboard charger. And then the outlet for that is that one there. This one, PCS right, comes up, goes along. So this is just 90mm heater hose again. And then it picks up on the original Tesla fitting, which I've taken the plastic molded bit off onto the tail there, and comes back up there through the molded plastic hose, through here and up, and back into the super bottle. Radiator here, obviously. I took this apart. This big bit, that big size there, is not the radiator. That's for the air conditioner. That's the condenser for the air conditioner. But there is just sitting above that, which is, you know, a third of the width and only about that thick, it's tiny, is the radiator for the thermal bottle that sits in there, and then obviously a thermofan. And that thermofan, I've only ever heard it come on in the Tesla when you're supercharging. Because you think about, when you're driving along, it sort of doesn't really need any cooling, or very little. Because you think about it, it averages, well, this Tesla here, this averages what, 14 kilowatts to maintain 100 k's an hour, 110 k's an hour. But when you're charging, this one will charge at 170 kilowatts. This one, because it's the long range, this will do up to 250 kilowatts, I think. So that's when the cooling is needed. It starts really ripping those fans and opens up the front vents and stuff. I'll put it down again and we'll have a look at how I got the radiator in. Just before we put it down, let's have a look underneath here. You can see here getting this radiator module in. The clearance issues I was faced with. This is the steering box of the Land Rover, obviously, and I can't move that. That has to stay there. And you can see I've had to take away some of the strengthening of the shroud here. It's still plenty strong enough to clear the steering box. It clears it well now. There's plenty of room up there, and for the to get to the bleed screw at the top of the steering box there. You can see the pipes for the electric steering pump have to feed up in there. I've used This is another thing that worked really well, actually. I was quite surprised. I've used the original Tesla mounts. So these brackets here are the original Tesla mounts with a nice little rubber thing that the radiator shroud sticks through. And then they do come up to an alloy bracket up here. This is actually a different one because the Tesla one was slightly too short. So I've just replaced it with another piece of alloy to mount up on the inner guards. So that worked out really well. My shroud was actually broken. This thing here was actually broken off in the accident. I'm
quite happy with the repair. I've glued it back on, but that's not going to be strong enough. There's a piece of alloy plate in there with some screws and that come all the way through here, so that's nice and strong again. The front mounting of the radiator, because of the width, I couldn't use the original Tesla mounts because they wouldn't fit between the inner guards there, but it worked out perfectly. They're the original Land Rover mounting points, and they're the original Land Rover rubber mounts for the Land Rover radiator. That worked out perfectly. I've added obviously that alloy angle bracket and nut-inserted it into the front of the radiator case. So I'll put the car down and I'll show you the other difficulties I had with mounting that in there. Just wanted to mention too the benefit of this sort of system. If you're navigating to a supercharger and it needs to preheat the battery, because batteries charge a lot better at a certain temperature, what it does is it uses the motor down there. It actually runs the motor a bit less efficiently, so it creates heat, and then uses that heat through the thermal system. It directs it through to the battery to warm the battery up. It's really, really brilliant. It doesn't need any external other heaters to change the battery temperature. It just uses this and then just ducts it where it needs the heat. So you can see here that's the condenser for the air conditioner, and then down here we've got the actual radiator that comes in and out through here. Clearance, there was a few clearance issues. Initially when I offered this up, it's like, how the hell am I going to fit this in? It only just sort of fits between the two guards here, and you can see here I've had to scallop out this bit to clear this hose. That wasn't too big a deal. But also down here, that's the bottom refrigerant line point. I had to put a hole in the bottom of the guard there to get that through, which is a little bit of a pain, but not too bad. Taking out the headlight and getting in, you can get access to all this area through the headlight because I'm sort of a bit more restricted through here. So that meant I could fit it in, and the original mounts here I've had to cut off. You can see here they just would make it too wide, so they used to have a rubber mount in here. But yeah, now I've got it mounted on the original Land Rover mounts down there. It's got active flaps here, active louvers that either let the air flow through or not. So it's obviously better for aerodynamics and efficiency if you've got them closed when you're driving along. A little solenoid thing that activates these louvers. So the grille, when I put the grille on, I'll probably enclose, in fact I will enclose the top bit, so there'll be no airflow through there, and then, I mean, this whole front can be enclosed really. I sort of only need a bit of airflow through there. I've sort of lost a bit more frunk room here, haven't I? So I mean, I've still got stuff up here, but I couldn't have mounted that radiator any differently. It can't go down, it can't fit. Like the chassis rails are there and the box is there, so I couldn't have done that any better. I've still got a lot of room under here that I'll put an auxiliary battery in, so I can use that space. I can't put too much down here because we've got the thermal fan, and at some point we do need airflow through there, but I've still got a bit of room for a frunk here, and I can actually put something over here because the bonnet actually comes up fairly high here, so I do have a bit more room up high here for maybe chairs or something. And I've tried to leave this area open as much as possible as well for more room. I can even probably use under the guard there. Not as big a frunk as I was hoping, but you know, there's nothing I could have done about that. There we go. Had to get a little nice piece of silicon 25mm 90-degree bent hose, and then just I've got a 25mm brass barb in there to link those two, and then made sure I've secured it all so it doesn't move around everywhere. All the coolant lines are in now, so I can put coolant in and bleed the air out of the system. Alright, so time to fill this baby up with coolant. The first thing we've got to do is create a vacuum, which is what this setup does. Bit of coolant in. Added a vacuum, and now I'm just going to use the vacuum to suck all the coolant in. Especially with this sort of system, you sort of need to vacuum it because there's so many ups and downs and air bubble traps because the pipes are going everywhere. Close off the vacuum, the air compressor, and then open up the coolant inlet, and then it gets sucked in because there's a vacuum there. I can hear it going in. It takes a fair bit of coolant. I think it's something like 15 litres or something. Actually quite a bit in there. I'll create a bit more vacuum again. You can see all the bubbles being sucked and vacuumed out. Continuing to vacuum until that bubbling stops basically. Get all the air out. So, just discovered a little bit of a weeping from this one here. So yeah, I'm going to have to take that off and have a look, see why it's leaking. Taking that hose off and just doing a bit of a visual on this point here. Is this that's damaged or the hose? I want to test to make sure there's not a crack or something around the outlet of the bottom of the super bottle there. So you can see I've just put a bung in there. So I'll put a bit of coolant in and check, see if there's any weeping out through there. Hopefully not. If it does leak, I'm going to need a new super bottle, which would be a little bit of a pain. Okay, moment of truth. Just put a bit of coolant in up to there. Oh, it looks okay. Yeah, no leaking. Good. So it's not the super bottle, thank God. Double checking from the bottom here. Looks really good. So it's definitely not the super bottle. The O-ring seals around there. Let's look at the hose. So we've got the hose here, which looks all right. So I might replace that O-ring, obviously. Should check, make sure that around here isn't cracked or something. I might just dry this completely and then just put a bit of water in the end and just make sure that the this fitting hasn't got a crack in it somewhere. And if not, I'll just replace that O-ring, which is pretty easy to do. Dry it all around there. Just going to put some water in the end here. Oh, and not spill it would be useful. I reckon it's just that O-ring. So the extension things that ran alongside the battery. So this one here is actually where this hose plugged into. This bit here didn't used to plug in directly into the heat exchanger of the motor there. It used to plug in there, run alongside the battery, then come to another point here, and then eventually go to the heat exchanger. So I might try and scavenge an O-ring out of this one, I guess. Yeah, so I got the O-ring out of there, had a good look around where it sits, make sure it all looks okay. So yeah, I'll just chuck this in and guess we'll just put it back up and hopefully it won't leak anymore. So we're back on. So put some fluid in and hopefully it's not going to leak. We'll see what happens. At least it's pretty easy to do this. Like they just unclip and push back in. Cross your fingers. Oop. Oh, you bastard. It's leaking. All right. I have to come with something else. Okay. So I've taken the fending fitting out and I just wanted to check that it's definitely the fitting. If I change the fitting, it's going to work. So I've put this one back on and then put coolant in and I don't think it's leaking. Hopefully it's not. Let's have a look underneath. Yeah, good. So totally dry. Looks like, yeah, it's definitely the fitting. Something wrong with that fitting. So I'll use that fitting and I'll use the same fitting, that straight fitting, to go to the heat exchanger there, and I'll just use some 19mm heater hose. I'm going to mark start in there. So I'm just going to put I don't want to cut through, just want to put a little shallow cut line just to weaken it. Then I'll heat it up and then use this to peel it off. Right, so put it all back together with a piece of 19mm heater hose. So hopefully that should fix all my problems. And I put coolant in and no more leaky leak. Everything is nice and dry. Yeah, so immediately no more bubbles coming out of there. So obviously it was just sucking air from that fitting there, so straight away it's instantly better. Yeah, definitely no air in there anymore. It's good. And now just top up the bottle to the max mark and we should be done. The thermal system is done. Remember to take my screw out from the breather hole. Job done. Just got to remember I've got to replace this after 500,000 kilometres. So remind me